then you can hope to be protected by international law. But anyway, that's a separate discussion.
Thank you. Just a quick reaction, then we'll move on.
I wasn't saying the U.S. is doing what it's always done, and it just sounds different now. But clearly, this is a marked deviation from what they wanted. But it's more the idea that now we're seeing it play out in other areas, and we've suffered from some of that.
Thank you. We've touched, I think some of you mentioned China. If we could speak about China a little bit. Deputy Prime Minister, I think, if I'm not mistaken, you I think in September, met the foreign minister there. But overall, how would you describe the European approach, foreign policy-wise or trade-wise, if you want to comment, toward China? And has it been clarified? There was certain nervousness maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, around the trade relationship. Has it dissipated, or is it still something that is top of mind for European leaders?
So for a few years, until a couple of years ago, China was doing wolf warrior diplomacy. It didn't work. Now it's the United States' turn. In my previous job, I was a member of the European Parliament, and I co-authored the Parliament's position on China, which to be succinct in a slogan, collaborate where possible, compete where needed, confront where necessary. So it's a much more complex relationship than the one between the West and the Soviet Union in the past. China is, of course, our biggest trading partner, mostly deficit, but still. And so it is a challenge. But we need to respond to this extraordinary rise of this great civilization. I mean, the number of engineers that they have, the number of fast trains, the domination of various markets, but also to an attempt at blackmail. I mean, China tried to do to us what the United States tried to, in terms of critical materials, what the U.S. has tried, to do in the area of chips. But that they would even consider such a move should be a wake-up call.
Thank you. Could I go to you, Nir, as well on China? There is a lot of interest in understanding the Chinese economy from an investor's lens. How would you evaluate it? Is it more investable than 2 years ago, less investable?
So I'll make 2 comments, because I also want to refer back to some of the comments that have been said here before about the Middle East. But I would say 2 things are important to keep in mind. The way we got here is the entire world was on a path to globalization, like I said before. China was always playing a different game. I mean, China was always playing the game of a state-driven economy where protecting national interests. In one way, we're all now playing China's game. The conversion is kind of, and it's classic game theory, where you need everybody to collaborate, because it's enough that one person is, trying to stick it to others, or just working within their self-interest, and the entire game starts to shift. So they're better at playing this because they've been playing this for a long time and pretty successfully. That's kind of one thing to keep in mind. And then on whether it's investable, I would say China and Asia more broadly play an incredibly important role in people's portfolios, and they're almost always underweight for many, many reasons. So in a world that is fragmented, that has such US concentration, which is built up over decades, China is actually, and again, broader Asia, is one of the best diversifiers that you can have. Bridgewater has been in China for 40 years, including onshore. We're the largest foreign manager onshore. And even through the last couple of years where, people could say China's had its struggles, our fund there returned north of 30% per year. So definitely investable, definitely plays an important part in people's portfolios. Can I make one more comment on the things that have been said before? It's going to shift to a different topic. I have to. first of all, on the history lesson on the Middle East and Israel. The UN made decisions in 48 that were contested not by Israel that started this entire fight. So the way to work through our differences, which are important because I totally agree on the suffering is terrible. Also the suffering of October 7th, the suffering of hostages that have been held for years, and the suffering in Gaza, terrible. We can't always choose to start the conversation from the place that's most comfortable to us. And to step back, I'd say that about the world more broadly a little bit, because these changes are so massive. The biggest question is not whether things are going to change, it's how are we going to come out of this on the other side? It's going to be better or it's going to be worse. Yeah. And I would go to the 1930s, not because it's the same, but because these changes happen once in 100 years. I think it's a good way to kind of look at, we had disenfranchised people and disenfranchised nations that made political choices to challenge the world order. By the way, we had a backdrop of a technological race for nuclear capabilities that promised world dominance and ability to set the new world order, and it ended with Bretton Woods and the nuclear bomb and the end of the World War, and started an era that lasted up until now. Because what's happening now is, again, disenfranchised people within nations, disenfranchised nations, are saying, I'm going to make political choices that are going to change the world order. Again, we have the backdrop of a technological arms race that promises world dominance and the ability to set the next world order. And the question about whether this is going to end up in a massive war, I'm the grandchild of a grandmother that lost her entire family in the Holocaust, is up to the people here in Davos. Are we going to manage it well? Or are we going to let it get out of control? And for that, we both have to put each other in each other's shoes and say, we owe this to so many people that rely on us. Not to just argue our position, but to say, how do we manage through change well?
Can I respond? Because it wasn't a history lesson. Yeah. I'm a student of history. It would take us much more than 45 minutes for me to go through the history of the Middle East.
I actually want to go to another diplomatic development here, which is the Board of Peace that was launched here. Maybe I could start with you, Mina, and you can all come in if you want. So how do you look at it? And how does this then relate, in your view, to the chance of sustainable peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians?
I mean, look, I think it's best for Israelis and Palestinians to talk about what the chance of peace is, because ultimately it'll be for them to decide. The Board of Peace comes after much suffering, but also comes after much failure of all the processes. I mean, the peace process became something that was managed. Meetings were held on a regular basis just so that somebody could say, oh, we're trying to solve this, and nothing. So good for anyone who thinks we're going to come up with a plan and we're going to pull people. You know, you had people on stage there from various countries, some immediately affected and some surprising. You wouldn't expect that they're involved. So I think that's important, to get that buy-in, to get and renewed energy. Whatever you think of the Trump administration, when they want to put their mind to something, they can pull people together. So let's try something new. But it was interesting that the Palestinian voice that we heard from Dr. Ali Shaz, who's highly respected, came through video conference for whatever logistical reasons. And it would be interesting to see how they're going to be able to implement on the ground. So I, for one, think we have to give it, it's the only game in town, so you have to give it all the support possible and also try to bring people to the table to deliver after the phases that we know about to get to eventual real peace. And I think that is what's fair for the Israelis, the Palestinians, and the wider region. But I think to write off the Board of Peace just because people don't like the style of the Trump administration or the way that it's happened would be wrong, because we need it to succeed.
Thank you. I'll go to all of you on that, Minister.
Yeah, we've worked a lot over the past year on this issue alongside Saudi Arabia and a number of other friends and partners. This work has culminated with a declaration, a text that indeed led all of us to step in each other's shoes. And that says basically, beyond the ceasefire, the humanitarian help and the liberation of hostages, that Hamas should be called for what it is, a terrorist organization, condemned for its crime and excluded for any future of the governance in Palestine. That there should be an integration of Israel and the Arab countries that would lead them to stand into regional organizations such as the one we've seen grow in Asia or in Europe. And there should be a right to self-determination for the Palestinian people in a Palestinian state that would be demilitarized and that would be democratic. This declaration that was adopted at the General Assembly at the UN on September 12th at an overwhelming majority of nations, 142 against 10, opened the path, I believe, to the US-led efforts that came together during the high-level week at the UN, leading to the peace plan that President Trump presented. And that we've supported without reservation because it had been consulted with our Arab partners and because it mentioned this legitimate aspiration of the Palestinian people to statehood. And in the same way, we've supported the resolution of the Security Council that gives a legal basis for the Trump peace plan. And we've committed to support it in as much as we could and in many different ways. And what happened today was positive in the sense that we're seeing movement from phase 1 to phase 2 of the plan. We've heard that the US team announced that the Rafah passage might open. We've heard the US team mention repeatedly that the coordination and contact with the Palestinian Authority was live, which is all of what we need to avoid